Hi, everyone, and welcome to NightSchool. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Lynn from the Nightlife programming team.
And I'm Christina, the event producer.
We are back again tonight with your weekly dose of nightlife. Tonight's NightSchool is Food for Change. We're digging into the local food scene and chatting with individuals and organizations that are working to better communities through equity, sustainability, and science.
First up, we have Dr. Brian Fisher, the Academy's curator of entomology, who you may remember from his Ant radio show a couple months ago. He's going to be talking about his ongoing project in Madagascar called Breakfast Before Conservation. And then we have Faheem Carter, Isaiah Powell, Danielle Calibird Fernandez, and Teddy Fang from the Bayview's Florence Fang Community Garden. And they'll be talking about their newest urban farm project with the goal of changing a long history of environmental and food injustice in their neighborhood. Next up, La Cocina's Naomi Maisel and Chef Tiffany Carter, who's the owner of Boug Cali, will talk about the challenges of COVID-19 on the program's chef entrepreneurs, including Chef Tiffany, and how La Cocina is helping to support them right now.
After that, we'll head to the kitchen with Chef Mike Weller of 18 Reasons. He'll be showing us a few fermentation-friendly recipes to use up those extra veggies you have at home. Hopefully you saw some of the recipes we shared earlier this week and are ready to ferment along. And then closing out the night, we have Anthony Myint, co-founder of Mission Chinese Food and Zero Foodprint. He'll be chatting with us about how to eat our way out of our current food crisis.
And just a reminder that, as always, with our nightlife programs, we're completely live, so anything can happen. So please say hello in the chat, give our partners some love while they're talking, and we will see you at the end. And so first up, here's Dr. Brian Fisher.
Food for thought tonight. And being at home all the time, actually, one thinks about food a lot, and food and a changing world. Well, it keeps me eating a lot of cookies, to be honest. But for the rest of the world, like where I work in Madagascar, food is a hot topic all the time. And this changing world gives us a chance, I think, to also change. And we should seize this opportunity and do more. And I want to share with you a solution and a story about food in Madagascar that I think offers a very unique opportunity to provide a solution that will both impact people's lives and also impact biodiversity. And many of you don't know that the California Academy of Sciences actually has a project in Madagascar. I've been working there at our center for over 15 years. It's a beautiful center where we house students and do research on insects and plants, but we also have a very innovative program in food. And this program, I think, is a fantastic solution because it stems from basic science and builds on this incredible biology of insects. Now, when you think of Madagascar, though, you may be thinking of just the incredible lemurs, this kind of storybook or on your bucket list for a tour. But as a biologist, it's a place to go and find new species or discover this incredible adventure of biological exploration. And for the last 25 years, I've been working there and exploring and looking for new species. But as you get to know the country, you realize it's more than just this incredible diversity. Behind it all is a story that most people don't see. It's a place where 53% of the children are malnourished. 92% of the people live on less than $2 a day. The population will double in 30 years. 10% of the native habitat remain. And when people are hungry, they have very limited choices. They can't put more cattle on already degraded lands. They can't cut down the remaining forest to grow food. They have very few options. And as an entomologist, I always felt I didn't have anything to offer. But it's really clear that we have to offer something, that we have to do more, because in 50 years, there may be no forest left in Madagascar. It's a combination of many things, but it's a shared problem. It's a world problem. It's not just something that will never impact us. In fact, that world as a whole is going to have to deal with how we're going to feed a growing population. Now, in Madagascar, our solution both will improve people's lives, but also improve biodiversity. It actually builds upon a tradition in Madagascar of them eating insects. Now, to come up with this solution, it made me actually change as a biologist, because before my adventures were to get into the most remote forest. And now I've realized if I want to actually help save those remaining forests, I have to start working with the people around the forest and actually across the entire country. Migration is happening within the country, and those immigrants come. The only place they can move to is in the forest because of mining, because that's where the trees are. And they'll cut down the forest for maybe only 1 or 2 years in which they can grow food. We need to offer everybody a solution for food. So insects are a great solution. Our studies have shown that 70% of the people in Madagascar today still eat insects. And insects, as an incredible animal, is one of the best things to grow, to farm for food. You see, insects are more efficient converters of plant material and waste into little protein packages that are great and tasty to eat. They're much more efficient than a cow, 6 times more efficient, much more efficient than a pig or a chicken. So it's because they're not warm-blooded. They don't have to waste any energy on heating or sweating, so they're more efficient with water. And now we're learning that when humans eat insect as food, we actually can absorb more nutrients, micronutrients, than if we were just eating it a steak, for example. So it's good protein, it's more efficient and sustainable for the environment, and it builds upon the traditions. And I want to share with you some of the great traditions and kind of give you a sense of what they taste like for the insects of Madagascar. And in the end, I want to explain how we're using some innovation and technology to try to scale up this tradition to address the food security, famine, and biodiversity needs in Madagascar. Now, our first step as a biologist was to go out and figure out what are they eating. And often we find it's the young women and boys that are out collecting. Here's a group of women that are actually collecting aquatic beetles and larvae of dragonflies. Now, those dragonflies are really tasty as shrimp when they're fried up. And the beetles are eaten. Now, beetles are eaten all the time. In fact, we often see little boys collecting the rhinoceros beetle, and they brought into to be cooked. They take the wings off, and then they just, in their own fat, are stirred up, and then you can just gobble them up, and they taste like pine nuts. They're actually delicious. In Madagascar, though, there's a big tradition of you creating textiles with wild silk. Now, it's like this, dual win. You have the silk that you harvest from the cocoons, and then you can actually eat the pupa. And it's actually really tasty. And even when the French colonials were there, they would actually serve a veal with pupa at the French residence in Madagascar. Also, we found that to our surprise, they also ate this giant arachnid, this giant spider, one of the largest spiders in the world, in fact. And we also learned, to my surprise, that they actually pulled silk from the spiders and made beautiful clothing, traditionally and even recently for design. But I want to talk about the bacon bug. Now, this is one of my favorite insects in Madagascar, and actually the insect that's preferred almost everywhere it's present in Madagascar. It's a fulgorid, which is like a cicada or a kind of really fancy aphid. And it grows on beans and in the forest, and people actually cherish this. And we actually are using it with collaborators to actually see if we can actually reduce bushmeat consumption by providing more access and increasing the farming of the bacon bug. And the bacon bug is so easy. It has its own fat. It's like bacon. You just put it in a pot and it fries up, and you can just pop them in as a snack. And so I'm working with Courtney Borderson, who's an expert on bushmeat consumption and now is becoming an expert on the bacon bug. And we're with her using this to actually see and test if we can reduce the food consumption for the most cherished giant lemurs of Madagascar. But everywhere we went in Madagascar, there was one thing that was always eaten, and that was grasshoppers and locusts, and also crickets. There's a giant cricket in the north of Madagascar that they eat. They're tied up like little rats to be sold in the market. And we realized that foods, the edible insects, have different flavors and different uses in Madagascar. And you could have secundry as a snack and as a supplement. But really, if we wanted to address food security, we had to have large quantities. So we wanted to learn more about what and how they ate the crickets and grasshoppers. And once they put them in a pot and cook them up, they would dry them and then either cook them or dry them and then create them into a powder. But this was tasty, and it was a supplement. In fact, early explorers to Madagascar found that when they arrived in Madagascar, they said, wow, a country without famine. When there was no crop, they always had their grasshopper powder or their locust powder to add to their rice. So our goal with the project was to see if we could learn how to rear and farm crickets to create a powder to actually supplement the diets of communities where biodiversity was important to protect. So we teamed up with Darren and the crew at Entomo Farms. You can shop for their products online. They do great stuff. And they actually came and taught us really how to farm. We also needed a cricket expert, so we teamed up with Sylvain, and working with the Malagasy team there, we developed a protocol for farming crickets. So we, at the end of this, about 7 weeks or 6 weeks, we get a big pile of crickets that we can turn into cricket powder. And we also learn, we also get a fertilizer, an equal weight. For that fertilizer, as it turns out, is super potent and it bioactivates the soil and is going to be a key element for reforesting Madagascar. It's a very simple process. You just dry them in an oven or in the sun, and then you grind them into a powder, and we have our product. Now, the last couple of years, we've been really focused on doing this with less feed, less space, and time. And now we actually have a pilot program that's finished where we say, yes, we can produce 30 kilos of cricket powder a month. And we're using that in 3 trials that have been a big success. We've gone to the south of Madagascar and looked at it for famine relief. We actually introduced it in TB clinics to see if we had an impact on the health of people in the clinics, and it's been a great success there. And almost too much, because our trial experiment had half the students with cricket powder and the other half didn't, and they noticed that the people eating the cricket powder were getting better, so they actually forced everybody to get the cricket powder, and now they're extending that to 10 clinics across Madagascar. But we also introduced it using chefs in Madagascar to develop new recipes, and we introduced it into school lunch programs, and it's been a big success. And we just got actually new data yesterday showing that there is a significant weight gain in those students that are actually eating the cricket powder for lunch. That means they're gaining weight, they're growing, and their brains have enough nutrients to learn. Without school, without learning, there's going to be no hope in Madagascar. And our goal now is to see if we could scale up production to feed all the kids in Madagascar that need to be fed. We estimate there's going to be 1 million people. And we're going to have a product too that will allow us to actually help in the reforestation of Madagascar, because we need the landscapes to improve as we improve the people. And to that end, we're actually trying to right now fundraise for our new edible insect research center in Madagascar, which with the Minister of Higher Education will also be a center for teaching and training. But really, it's going to be a place where we develop these innovations, where the Cal Academy will be there developing solutions that would have widespread use to any place where nature and people need to work together. In the end, as I said, this is a solution for Madagascar, for Africa, but now in the time of COVID, we all need to pivot. We all need to think about an opportunity to do more. Take advantage of it. Don't lose this opportunity. Go out and try edible insects. Buy some from Entomo Farms. Think about the world differently. We all see that it's 4 times more frequent the fires in California. But soon we're going to also realize that there's a connection between what we eat, our food systems, and the environment. So let's get ahead of ourselves and start now pivoting and thinking about this opportunity. Great to talk to everybody. Thank you so much, the host at NightSchool, and support the Academy, become a member. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Faheem Carter from Forest Fang Asian Community Farm. I've been there for 7 years, and in my time there, I started growing vegetables for my community. I started off growing vegetables for my family. I've seen the impact from it just with my own family. My mom has high blood pressure, and I did some research. What would help treat high blood pressure? Beets. Beets is my main crop that I grow. Beets really help the blood. It opened up veins to help the heart push the blood vessels through. Now, when I started off in my own community, I seen the impact. So I started off going to my neighbors. My neighbors then was excited for it, and they wanted their own vegetables. So I helped them started off growing for themselves. And I realized that I needed more space. So I reached out to Teddy Fang at the garden, and I've been there ever since. I've been growing more and more vegetables. And now I just started selling produce to the community, local restaurants, families, everyone that just needs vegetables. Now, so I don't just only grow beets. I also grow kale, collard greens, arugula, lettuce, salads. And so I grew up in a food desert community. So there is no vegetables. There is no fresh vegetables. There is no store where we can go out and purchase fresh vegetables. So it's very difficult for this community to have access to fresh vegetables. So that means that we have to have more community gardens, more access to land for this community. If we do not have fresh vegetables, we have to go out into the hospital where this community is not really friendly of going to the doctors. So we need to take control of our own lives, our own health, and grow our own vegetables. The impact of that is very big. It's bigger than just this community. We can also teach kids how to grow their own vegetables. We can heal ourselves and stop going to some of these doctors all the time. We can exercise more. It's very impactful in many ways. As I was growing up in the city of San Francisco, I grew up mostly eating chips and soda and McDonald's. So I was a really overweight kid. And there was a big stigma about being overweight, and you did not want to be overweight, but I did not have access to fresh food. So I had to continue to eat bags of chips, candy. And now I realize that eating healthy, eating fresh vegetables tastes better than candy, tastes better than chips. Yes, I still like to eat a bag of chips, but I'd rather have more vegetables, more fresh vegetables than a bag of chips. I'd rather see a fresh, nourished, healthy garden than corner stores and liquor stores on every corner in my neighborhood. So support the garden, support every garden that you see, because it is very impactful for the youth, for adults, for seniors. We all need healthy, fresh vegetables. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Isaiah Powell, and this is my wife, Danielle.
Hello.
And we all know that community gardens are essential. And why? Why are they essential? Well, in particular, they foster community. It's a place where people can come together. It's a place where people can work together and thus strengthen community bonds. Now, in our particular case at the Asian Florence Fang Community Garden, I started there volunteering. I met Johnny Chan, the manager, and he said, hey, come out every Saturday morning with the help of the San Francisco Marin Food Bank. We're going to feed 180 plus families every single Saturday. And I thought, wow, great. That'll be great. I'm new to San Francisco. I moved out here in 2019, and I came wanting to offer something to the community I was going to be living in. And we were walking around and we saw the sign. And I said, wow, it says Asian Community Garden. I wonder, is it all Asian? And I met Johnny, Come to find out, it's like 98% Cantonese only speaking. But like I said earlier, community garden. That language barrier, no barrier. Instead, it turned into a bridge between the Asian community here and myself. And then in the future, anyone else who comes through with an open heart and wants to grow and learn, that opportunity to forge relationships is there. And that's one of the things that propels me to come back and back and back to the garden, because the sense of camaraderie, which you get when you have a shared purpose and you're working towards a shared goal, whether you're just digging, whether you're planting seeds or turning compost, it forges a strength between people that goes beyond words. So let's talk specifically about what's going on the other side, the western side of the Florence Fang Asian Community Garden Farm. 2019, that area was just weeds and debris. So we transformed that into productive growing. And this is a long-term vision, because what we want to do is, yes, we want to provide more organically grown, delicious fruits, vegetables for the community. We want to help anyone we find that's food insecure. So we're going to donate, the food that we grow. Give you a quick backstory. I'm coming back from New York, a friend's funeral, dear friend. And at the airport, Danielle calls me up. She says, hey, you should dedicate a row of veggies to George Floyd. This is like June 8th. And I knew that would resonate with a lot of people. It was a great time to galvanize the people for a positive cause. So she sets up a GoFundMe thing, and blah, explosion. Why? Yeah, people are feeling like they need to protest. They need to express their dissatisfaction with things in a positive way. And I love the idea because it inverts this notion of tragedy and death into one of hope and life. And in the era of COVID, we want to boost our immune systems. We want to fortify the immune system to be strong and be able to withstand any attacks, especially now. Anywhere you have a food desert, you're going to have a concentration of people who have cancer, asthma, diabetes. Anywhere in the country where there's a food desert, you're going to have a concentration of poverty. You're going to have environmental challenges like radiation in the soil or in the air. You know what I mean? Anywhere, Bronx, New York, that's the concentration of asthma in New York. Let's look at Bayview in San Francisco. So yeah, we need to have better food. And let's get to the foundation. How do you get better food? You got to have good soil, because hey, if you plant your roots in soil that has no nutrients, you ain't going to get much out of it, right? And soil depletion isn't just here in Bayview, it's all around the world. Talk about oil, talk about water, talk about soil. These are things that the high commodities and the water in the soil, the more that gets degraded, man, it's not going to look good for us surviving a couple hundred years from now. You know what I mean? So we're going to rehabilitate the soil. How are we going to do that? We had Bayview Green Waste Management donate like 3 truckloads of compost, which we laid down across the whole field. What happens when we do that? Well, as the compost continues to degrade and we water it, it seeps into the ground, it nourishes, it's reactivating the subsoil microbial life. When we started cutting down the weeds, when I brought out the weed whacker, I didn't see many worms or grubs. Now I see, anytime I'm out there, I see grubs, worms, ladybugs. Life is down there. And as they're doing their thing, living, they're giving strength to the plants. That's why the mustard greens light your life up. They taste so good, And this is something that we're working on. This is a process, like so many biological environmental processes on Earth. It takes time, and we're looking with a forward vision. So we want the ground to be black in a few years, highly nutritious. One thing I think is worthy of note is that, being that it's an urban garden farm, I wanted to showcase different ways, that you can use what some people might call refuse and get creative with it and grow with it. You know, we took some pallets that were just laying around, set them up, boom, put our shallow rooting herbs and veggies that don't, you know, the roots don't go that deep. It's a creative way. It looks funky. People like looking at it. Boom. We have a lot of pollen-rich and native plants. Why? Oh, because we want to help the bees, right? Because we know bees are great pollinators. Man, people rob people for bees. You know, there's a whole thing with that's how important they are. People rent out their bees. Central Valley, California, you know, they get bees from all over the country. That's how we get our delicious almonds. That's how California can be the breadbasket of a nation. We got to have the bees. So we are rehabilitating what? Human relationships, yes. Animals, yes. And the dirt, the environment, you know, because we're looking at it holistically. Everything's related to everything, and everything has a purpose on the planet. So we're trying to, you know, mend things. Another thing we want to mend is, you know, this is Ohlone territory. Bayview is called Umatak. That's where the Umatak village. You know, there's different groups of the Ohlone all around San Francisco in the East Bay. And thank God, yo, their numbers are going up. They're still here. They're still alive. Their language is still alive. They have language classes. The youth are learning to speak. And I can't find an Ohlone restaurant anywhere around here. So imagine someone comes to your town and then you can't find a restaurant. So we want to repair that in our way. And when it's safe to do so, there's a standing invitation for the elders to come through, consecrate the land. You know, there was a heavy Ohlone population on here. Bayview, look at the history of it. It's so robust with plant life, with seafood from the shellfish, different birds, you know, animals. It was the golden state before the gold was exploited. So we want to recognize the Ohlone, bring them back, bring them here, get some guidance. What do they know? You know, let's learn from that. They have a way of life that some things we could take from that and apply it to today. And it might help. It might be a different way to do things and relate to each other. One incident that I'm truly proud of is a mother and a son who lives across the street. She says to me, hey, every time we come out here to volunteer, it's like a bonding experience with me and my son. So that's an example of community coming together. And we are very thankful for the opportunity to be a part of it. It's so big, it's going to keep on going. The fruit trees we got right now, yeah, they're young. 3 years, people are going to come through. Oh, let me pick an orange. Look at the strawberries. What? Sweet. What? I'm not going to Kroger. I'm not going to Foods Co. I'm going right to the community garden where I volunteer. That's the kind of situation we want happening. And we're seeing the beginnings of that now. And we thank you for we all thank you for the time to speak, and thank you for listening. You know, soil remediation is there. And let me just drop this on you right quick. There are mushrooms out there that could take out the toxic stuff in bodies of water. It's called mycoremediation. Look into that. You know, let's look into the different weeds and plants and bioaccumulators like sunflowers that suck up lead out of the ground, right? A lot of ways we can repair this thing. A lot of it's already here, man. You know, that weed you think you could just throw out, you're sick of weeding, it might be something to it. It might be a nitrogen fixer, you know? So there it is. You should come visit.
Yeah, so thank you. I just wanted to go off one of his points about just the inspiration that's happening with the community coming together. So like he said, there's so many people coming through the garden, and it's inspiring them to learn how to grow food. So they're going home, they're you know, sending me text messages on Instagram and what have you, saying that, you know, seeing this has inspired them to learn about growing. So, you know, if anything, this is the most important for me, is to inspire others to learn how to grow, to be more self-sustainable, to learn about their health, take back their health, to improve their immunity and such. You know, the other part of the garden is that, you know, it is to serve, you know, a food desert. Yes, it's to give the access to organically grown vegetables, grown with love. But it's also a place of beauty And if any of you know the Bayview, it's dynamic. There's a, you know, it's a lot of things are happening right now. But there's a lack of parks. There's a lack of beauty. All the other neighborhoods in San Francisco have these places where people can go and get to know the local wildlife, see plants grow, just go sit somewhere and just meditate. So really, you know, I guess where I come in is just, I'm there to beautify. You know, I'm slowly trying to reintroduce local species into the area. The Pacific chorus frog, you know, trying to entice the native bees back. So, you know, when we talk of bees, we think only the European honeybee, but I think they said there's about 150 different species of native bees, and how do you bring them back? So I'm learning as I go. I'm learning the different requirements in order to, you know, entice the animals back and keep them. And so this garden becomes also a sanctuary. So anyway, thank you so much. I think we're out of time. Thank you for listening. We hope you come and visit us soon.
Thank you for the support, y'all.
Hello, hello. Can y'all hear us okay? Good. Well, thank you so much for having us. I am Naomi Maisel. I'm the community manager for La Cocina. And Tiffany, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Naomi.
So Tiffany and I are here joining y'all to represent La Cocina. I'm just going to go into a little bit of background about what we do and then get into a conversation about Tiffany's business and you know, how we've been managing with this COVID pandemic. So La Cocina, for those of you who do not know, is a nonprofit founded in the Mission in 2005. We were actually founded out of grassroots efforts done in the late 80s. Organizers had been talking to different folks, mainly immigrants, women of color, who were cooking a lot of food at home, maybe selling in an informal manner. Some folks even who had full business plans, but people just weren't actually turning their businesses into formal restaurants, which wasn't enabling them to make any formal economy out of it. And when women were asked why they weren't launching these businesses, their answer was a lack of affordable commercial kitchen space. So La Cocina was founded on the idea that if you provide affordable commercial kitchen space and you provide industry-specific technical assistance, then these extremely talented entrepreneurs who were experiencing barriers to entry in the marketplace could move from the informal economy to the formal economy, and from income patching to asset generation into ownership. And thus La Cocina was born. Since our inception, we've supported nearly 60 entrepreneurs in reaching economic self-sufficiency before the pandemic. We've opened 33 brick and mortar locations throughout the Bay Area, have generated $16 million in annual revenue, and created more than 250 jobs through all these efforts. Now, unfortunately, you know, where we are today with COVID, I think a lot of folks have maybe been reading about, you know, how COVID has impacted the hospitality industry, specifically the restaurant industry. You know, what that looks like for La Cocina. Universally, we've seen a 70 to 100% decline for all of our restaurants and sales. And these businesses are elastic when it comes to capital. So there's no capacity to absorb a multi-month shutdown. You know, you don't start a business with a huge trust fund or huge, you know, it's already really risky. Many restaurants are already very low margin, which I think a lot of folks who are not in the industry don't know. So when there are shocks like this to the system, there's no federal support. It's really hard to come back from. It's a really scary and complicated time without the large scale assistance or support, or without meaningful attention to the pandemic and the economic crisis that's going to follow. We're going to see folks who've been running these industries in a vulnerable position for so long continue to bear the brunt of that impact. With COVID, we personally at La Cocina moved really quickly to activate on a 3-phase strategy in response. So number one, we anticipated a mandatory closure and we began to implement these measures across our organization. So we encouraged all of our businesses to close their doors. We did the same at La Cocina, and as well as lay off as much of their staff as possible, which might sound counterproductive, but we determined that most folks could probably make more on unemployment than they could on the 70 to 100% sales decrease still working for the business. We also supported our entrepreneurs in securing rent abatement and got each person who had a commercial lease pro bono lawyers to renegotiate leases. If you think your landlord's crazy, just get a hold of these guys, trust me. We also have supported entrepreneurs in loan deferment, navigating employee assistance programs, and applying for grants. Our entrepreneurs have submitted over 500 applications to grant programs since this pandemic started. We also run a 4,400 square foot shared use commercial kitchen space, which is really where the bulk of La Cocina comes from in the mission, and is especially complicated right now in times of social distancing when everybody wants to use it. Our kitchen's the core production facility for the majority of our active businesses, and we've waived all kitchen fees since February of 2020, which was reduced for about $60,000 in bills for dozens of businesses, and we're committing to do this at least through the end of the year. Phase 2 has been about looking for new revenue streams and getting creative. So we started a community food box, which aggregates prepared foods from 10 entrepreneurs every week, with 100% of proceeds going to businesses. I'm making my way through one right now. It's about all I eat these days. We have a pickup model at La Cocina and a delivery model as well. We've generated over $300,000 for 49 businesses with the food box alone, and we've now begun a subscription service. And we've also ramped up promotion of our gift boxes as well for our retail packaged good businesses. In phase 2, we've been securing opportunities for entrepreneurs to feed frontline workers and protesters and vulnerable community members with various community partners like Dish and the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation, World Central Kitchen. Tiffany has been a part of that. We'll talk about more. In phase 3, we'll hopefully include a greater capacity to take on government programs with meal service to vulnerable populations. We're still constructing our municipal marketplace as a commissary kitchen within the Tenderloin neighborhood. And our goal is to get entrepreneurs to 50% of pre-COVID sales to help sustain themselves as we move into regeneration, which for us is not necessarily return to the status quo, but an access to things that give entrepreneurs a better sense of the opportunities when they do open, like additional access to childcare and healthcare, for example. So that's kind of a summary of what we've been up to. And now I'd love to hand it off to Tiffany. I'd like to reintroduce her. She's the owner of Boug Cali and a La Cocina participant who joined the program in 2018. She'll also be a vendor in our upcoming municipal marketplace in the Tenderloin. Tiffany, we'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how Boug Cali came to be.
Great. So I am a native of San Francisco, born and raised in the Bayview district. I've always been into food in different ways. I used to literally sell food like out of the backseat of my car. And then I went on to selling food out of my uncle's church on 3rd Street in San Francisco. I decided to take it a little more seriously because I actually was making money selling food like that. So I went to school and I am a formally trained chef. I started doing pop-ups and then I worked my way up to a food trailer, which was located in Bayview on 3rd and Hudson. From there, the business was getting a little crazy. That is when I started La Cocina, and they really helped me to formalize and really get my business into place. I also now have a location at the Chase Stadium, and soon the La Cocina market, once all the COVID stuff is over.
Thanks, Tiffany. And, can you speak a little to how Boug Cali was affected by COVID and what that looks like from an owner's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really crazy because it's like, you spend a lot of time as a business owner planning business plans and then something like this happens and it's like just throw the whole plan away. So prior to COVID, we did a lot of catering to tech companies, and that's primarily what I was doing while the marketplace was being built. And then I also had the Chase Center location, and both of those streams of income in my work just completely shuttered, like within a week almost. Like it just cut off. So yeah, I mean, but really thankful to La Cocina. I have been able to continue working during this whole time through things like the community food box and feeding the vulnerable population in the Tenderloin, and now being a part of off the grid great plates and feeding the seniors of San Francisco. So I have fortunately been able to still work. Just the way I'm working is completely different now.
Yeah. And I know you and I are very familiar with the names of those programs, but can you talk a little bit more about what that means with those programs and how you've adapted your business over the last several months with these new opportunities?
Yeah, so a lot of these is like community-based, as far as like the Tenderloin District, is that their name? TNDC, they're community-based. So through them, I was able to, we get small contracts to feed the vulnerable populations in like the single room occupancy hotels in the Tenderloin. Right now, I have a contract with Off the Grid, Great Plates, which it can be cut off at any moment. So that's kind of where it gets like kind of scary as a business owner, because I still have staff and this is how I feed my family also, where we feed the seniors and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's really just community based and finding creative ways to still work.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you want people to know, like us as consumers, about how to support yourself and other business owners like yourself in this time?
I think right now, like our way of life is changing. So just as consumers, just adapt to change and how you eat. Like the community food boxes are excellent because you can not only eat Boug Cali food, you can eat so many different restaurants in one box. And, so it's just changing the way that we normally do stuff. So definitely be supportive of community food boxes and ordering food online and just all these changes now that's come up.
Yeah, absolutely. Y'all had to get real creative with this.
Definitely.
Has there been anything like new or exciting or like creative that has come out of this? Not to try to find a positive maybe, but that you think you might continue to do moving forward?
Yeah, like I kind of like feeding the seniors and stuff like that. Like I kind of got used to it now. Like, it's different. Like, like it doesn't have to be so fancy, like it's totally different. And yeah, like I kind of like it. And then also like it kind of opened my eyes to like, packaged food and, just different things like that. So yeah, I'm kind of just rethinking everything now. And that's kind of what COVID did to me. And I think a lot of people, it's just adapting to all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the seniors are used to your food too. So anyway,
got some good stuff coming for them tomorrow.
Absolutely. Well, I know that we're close to time. I would say, to everyone watching, definitely follow Boug on social media and keep up with what she's up to. If you want to support La Cocina, there's 3 main ways to do so. If you go to lacocinasf.org, you can check them all out. Like Tiffany said, the food box is a very delicious way to support, but there's also funds you can donate and things to contribute. And if you have any questions, all of our emails are on there and we'd love to answer them for you and hopefully feed you one of these days.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mike. I'm the chef at 18 Reasons. Thanks for NightSchool for inviting us to be here tonight. Tonight I'm going to look at addressing the abundance of summer vegetables and preserving them so they don't go to waste. We aren't going to do an actual fermentation tonight. Fermentation takes a long time, but we're going to do a cure and a quick pickle really quickly and just talk about who we are and what we do and give you a couple recipes to take advantage of community gardens. So I'm going to start by cutting up a cucumber very thinly. We're going to cure this. We're going to draw out moisture from this cucumber with a combination of sugar and salt. So I'm just slicing it thinly. 18 Reasons is a community-based cooking school and nonprofit in San Francisco. We successfully transitioned online and offer public and private classes on cooking in an online format. We are also really involved in community education and food distribution, and we've moved that aspect of our business online as well. We teach in low-income communities all over the San Francisco Bay Area and have moved large amounts of bread and food to places that need it during the whole COVID experience. So I'm going to take these cucumbers and add some sugar and some salt to draw moisture out of them. Moisture is one of the things that causes bacteria or enables bacteria to reproduce. And so to limit that, we're going to add salt and sugar to these thin slices, and literally in the span of time that I'm here talking to you, we're going to draw out extra moisture. That's going to make these cucumbers very crisp and crunchy. We're going to take some red onion really quickly, and I'm going to mirror what happens in an actual fermentation. In actual fermentation, lactobacillus creates an acidic environment to keep the other bacteria at bay. They do that as a kind of survival mechanism. But that is why the dill pickle that you grew up with is so acidic. That takes time. Fermentation requires a great deal of time for those bacteria to reproduce. I'm going to do this in 10 minutes, so I don't have time to wait for the bacteria to really get started. So I'm going to mirror that acidic environment by adding vinegar to my red onions, salt and sugar to my cucumbers, and I'll come back to that at the end. We'll mix them up. We'll have a salad. In my home, this salad is a perpetual salad. It stays in the fridge. As it depletes, as we eat and nibble off of it, we add more cucumbers from the garden, and we just keep it going. In weather like this, it is a beautiful and refreshing salad. So the other thing I want to make tonight is an escabeche. Escabeche is a technique invented by the Arabian cultures of North Africa and carried into Spain. And the Spaniards carried it around the world as they were doing other things around the world. So escabeche means a different thing in many different cultures. Tonight, I'm going to make escabeche like you perhaps would find at a taco shop. A condiment served on the side of especially rich or braised or grilled food. So I'm going to grab me some carrots and some peppers and some radishes. On the stove, I've got a tablespoon of black peppercorns, half a tablespoon of coriander, whole coriander seeds, a cup of vinegar, and a cup of water. I'm going to bring that to a boil. I'm just taking this carrot. I don't usually peel my carrots, but I think in this particular pickle, peeled carrots just look really a lot better. So I peeled this one, and it's going into a glass container with some cilantro and some cloves of garlic, and a nice big jalapeno. I've got a red Fresno chili, and then I have one of my favorite chilies. I have a black Hungarian. The black Hungarian is mild and kind of a cool color on top of it. Meanwhile, I'm going to crank up my stove and bring that vinegar to a boil. And then as I cut the rest of this in an actual fermentation experience, the first step in an actual fermentation is to add salt to food. The salt typically is at 2%. So if I have 100 pounds of shredded cabbage, I'm going to add 2 pounds of salt. And other than that particular example, 2% is an excellent reason to learn the metric system, because figuring out 2% of pounds is a real hassle. But you add 2% salt to a solution. The salt limits bacterial growth, but the particular bacteria that we particularly want to have, the lactobacillus, grows very well and reproduces in a salty environment. So it gives them a head start on their competition. It lets them get a good running start. And then stage 2 of the fermentation is, as the lactobacillus reproduce, They excrete acidic compounds, which makes the environment around the food sour. So in the case of cabbage, with a naturally fermented cabbage, you get sauerkraut. And you get that wonderful briny acidity that we associate with long fermented foods. And there we go. I told you these were quick pickles tonight. That can go into my fridge, and it will be delicious and acidic and crunchy tonight. It'll be better tomorrow. It'll be great in a week. I don't know if I've ever kept it more than a week or so, because I just munch on these kind of pickles because they're so tasty. On our cured cucumbers, I'm going to get my hands in there and begin scrunching it up. And I have already produced probably a half a cup of water off of these cucumbers. It's just drained off, so I'm going to drain that extra liquid away. So you can visit 18 Reasons at 18reasons.org. We have a complete calendar of our public offerings. We also, of course, accept donations there. You also can review all the wonderful things that the Cooking Matters half of our program does in communities near and around you. We have fabulous staff members who do online presentations. We've successfully moved online very quickly when we lost our site on 18th Street temporarily. So there's a great variety of things available to you there. I'm taking my quick pickled red onions and I'm going to add them to these dried off cucumbers and mix those together. Add just a little bit of sesame oil because it's one of my wife's favorite flavors, and give that a quick mix up. And I'm just going to load it into a glass jar as something pretty to display it with. So pickling doesn't just happen in summertime. Pickling in food preservation has been an important technique in regions and cultures where food scarcity is a challenge to life. And there are great traditional approaches what to do when there's an abundance. When there's a lot of food and you know you can't preserve it indefinitely, human cultures around the planet have come up with ways of making sure that they would have food a month later when things weren't so abundant, when things weren't as common or as available. And these preservation techniques like pickling and curing and fermenting all came about to solve the problem of what to do when there isn't food after a time of plenty. And not only are these flavors that ring true and are tasty, fermented foods provide all kinds of additional nutritional benefits, and it brings us back to where we came from culturally and on our palates. And that's an important thing. 18 Reasons is here to empower our community with the confidence and creativity needed to buy, cook, and eat good food every day. Thank you, NightSchool, for letting us be here tonight and share in this wonderful program. And I hope to see you all online in one of our classes very soon. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, my name is Anthony Myint. I'm the co-founder of Zero Foodprint and Mission Chinese Food. And I'm here tonight to talk about how we can eat our way out of the climate crisis. And just to be clear, when I say that, that sort of sounds like maybe a little bit of hyperbole, but I think there's actually pretty exciting and optimistic new science suggesting that we actually can just eat our way out of the climate crisis. So I want to start with a quick thought experiment and say, let's imagine it's the year, I don't know, 2500. Let's say alien anthropologists are coming to visit Earth and they see this planet, they see nature, they see the rainforest, they see these things. You know, this is a great planet. Every molecule of organic matter is recycling back into nature very efficiently, except for the entire food production system of the humans. That's weird. They took all the organic matter, they put it in plastic bags, they buried it in the ground, locked out of nature, where it created methane and off-gassing into the environment, into the atmosphere. They had global warming. Meanwhile, the soils got depleted. There were fewer nutrients. Food was less healthy, chronic disease. Then they went extinct. So that's kind of like a weird thought experiment, but in a way, that's actually what is happening. And so I want to suggest that we have an opportunity to reverse that, and not just through composting, but through all kinds of farming practices. Largely, these are known as regenerative agriculture or carbon farming. But I wanted to put up some quick news bits. So this is like new biogeochemistry, starting since 2015, 2018 or so. Scientists started to figure out that, basically nature can heal itself very quickly. And so if we give it a jump start, in this case, compost application on rangeland, for example, or regenerative agriculture, just things like planting trees, planting cover crops, basically just building healthy soil. Nature can basically create even more life in the soil. And in fact, this is life and soil biology that used to be there before extractive agriculture and kind of like capitalism, basically, removed it, killed it, put it all in the atmosphere. And so, there was a study called Drawdown, and it's a great study. I think the former executive director of the Cal Academy is now at Drawdown, actually, Jonathan Foley. And, it's a lot of different science experts, climate experts, estimating what would be plausible adoption for any given strategy, whether it's solar panels, educating girls, reducing food waste, planting trees. And for each strategy, they estimate what would be the plausible adoption rate by 2050. If it was adopted at that rate, how many billions of tons of carbon would it take out of the atmosphere? How much would it cost? How much would it save society? And how much would businesses profit by doing it? So I popped into piece of information from this big study, planting crops regeneratively and managing the way cattle graze. And like you can see from the numbers, I don't know, it's a little dry for 8 p.m. on Thursday night or whatever, but this is a huge win. This is a huge win for society to do these things, like 10x, 20x the win, the benefit. Like people are more nutritious, the food tastes better, there's less dead zones, water conservation, and of course, carbon, climate change, reversed, carbon coming out of the atmosphere and going back into the soil where it used to be. The problem is just that this costs money to do. To implement these practices costs money. And so the goal for society in terms of reversing climate change, and specifically in terms of the food system, should be to just direct money towards these kinds of farming practices, and that would change everything. And of course, that's easier said than done. But our organization, Zero Foodprint, first of all, I should almost back up and say, like, my background is from a restaurant called Mission Chinese, which, if anybody's been there, it's ostensibly like a party Chinese restaurant. And so I'm not coming from a perspective of like a purity test and we have to be perfect and, have the perfect peach from the farmer's market. Like, I also strongly believe in that and was running a restaurant called The Perennial, championing carbon farming and regenerative agriculture as well. But we started to realize that, after 40 years, organic is only 2% of farmland. And so we maybe need a faster way to make change than just sort of like telling people to eat the good stuff and hoping everybody can start to afford it and everything, farmers will follow suit and change. Like, that's a little bit of wishful thinking. So starting this past year, we began a collaboration with the Department of Food and Agriculture and the California Air Resources Board and Cal EPA to basically create a system like what is happening in renewable energy. And what I mean by that is, we all know this kind of idea of improving the grid. You pay a few bucks on your utilities bill or something like that. Local government or renewable energy advocates invest that in a local solar farm. 5-10 years later, the whole city has renewable energy, something like that, some version of that. And what's mind-boggling in a way is that even though farmland basically is one big living solar panel, we don't think about it that way. We know there's no system to improve the grid of food. And it would be so easy, it would be so easy for 5 cents from each McDonald's burger, 1% from your lunch at the Cal Academy to go towards improving the grid of food. And so it's really just a matter of kind of changing the frame of mind. Like, if you imagine telling people we could have done that in renewable energy 30 years ago, it'd be like, no, that's impossible. And here we are, like every day, like a new city is doing that. So California's trying to get carbon neutral by 2045. And they have a really big, that's a really ambitious target. California's the world's 5th largest economy. In order to do that, one of their plans is to take 25 million tons of carbon out of the atmosphere every year and turn it into healthy soil. We're not on track. We're not even close. But we could get there very quickly through collective economic action. As a restaurant operator, I'm feeling the hurt right now. It's the worst time ever. We're on life support. The whole industry, many restaurants will close. Half the restaurants maybe will close. But by the same token, it's such a massive industry that if we simply added a 1% charge, that would generate $1 billion a year before coronavirus. Maybe it's only 500 million now. That's quite a lot still. Imagine if Recology or the waste hauling company in every region added a $1 charge on each bill, just like a utilities company might do. That would generate some $40 million per month. So we have these options, and all it comes down to is basically coming together to take collective action to solve the problem. Zero Foodprint is doing this in the restaurant industry. Participating restaurants are adding 1% or going carbon neutral in other ways. We have a lot of great restaurants, some of the best restaurants in the world and in California. You can learn more about this at zerofoodprint.org. Thank you very much.
Thanks to everyone for tuning in, and a special thanks to Brian, Faheem, Isaiah, Danielle, Teddy, Naomi, Chef Tiffany, Chef Mike, and Anthony. Please show them some love and follow our guests on all the usual social channels. Next week, we're back, and we're going behind the scenes of our upcoming exhibit, Venom.
Again, thanks so much for tuning in, and thank you for your support of the Academy during this time. If you're able to, please consider a donation to the Academy's Relief Fund. Any amount helps. The donation link is in the YouTube description. And also please consider a donation to any of our presenting partners tonight. They're all doing super important work right now. And you can find all their web links also in the YouTube description. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And we will see you next week.
Good night.